Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Last time we concluded with Sri Bhagavan saying, "It is the mind which feels the trouble, misery, etc. Darkness never comes nor goes. See the sun and there is no darkness. Similarly, see the self and avidya will be found not to exist." Darkness has no substance. So it is with ignorance or avidya. Ignorance is unreal. It is unreal in terms of its content, and it is unreal in itself. It is not an entity, it is not a power. You have only to turn within with the light of knowledge, and such ignorance vanishes, because it is unreal. The disciple then asked, or rather said, Sri Ramakrishna and others practice concentration. Sri Bhagavan responded, concentration and all other practices are meant for recognizing the absence, that is, the non-existence of ignorance. No one can deny his own being. Being is knowledge, that is, awareness. That awareness implies absence of ignorance. Therefore, everyone naturally admits non-existence of ignorance. And yet, why should he suffer? Because he thinks he is this or that. That is wrong. I am alone is, and not I am so and so, or I am such and such. When existence is absolute, it is right. When it is particularized, it is wrong. That is the whole truth. See how each one admits that he is. Does he look into a mirror to know his being? His awareness makes him admit his existence or being, but he confuses it with the body, etc. Why should he do so? Is he aware of his body in his sleep? No. Yet he himself does not cease to be in sleep. He exists there, though without the body. How does he know that he exists in sleep? Does he require a mirror to reveal his own being now? Only be aware. And your being is clear in your awareness. The dialogue continues, but let's start with just that much. What is the purpose of spiritual practice? Is it to obtain a self that we don't already have? No. Is it to produce a self that is not now existing? No. Is it to modify something? No. Is it to purify something? No, not that either. The purpose of spiritual practice is to eradicate ignorance. That accomplished, everything is accomplished. And knowledge shines as natural. He says practices are meant for recognizing the absence, that is, the non-existence of ignorance. In what way is the non-existence recognized? If the practice is true and deep, suffused with real knowledge, one realizes that everything that has been imagined in ignorance is non-existent. And in addition, he realizes that ignorance itself does not exist. The absolute non-existence of ignorance can be said to be the reason for perpetual knowledge. How to realize this eternal knowledge. The Maharshi says, no one can deny his own being. Isn't that so? Being is undeniable. Your existence is doubtless. Then he says, being is knowledge. That is awareness. This will not be grasped. We are accustomed to conceiving of knowledge as if it is the relation between two things, a subject who knows and an object that is known. Knowledge appears as the relation between them. Self-knowledge is otherwise. There are no such divisions in self-knowledge as an individualized knower, an object that is known, and a relation between them. In the knowledge of your being, who knows what? Being, that is existence, is self-luminous, that is, it is self-knowing. What knows your being? Being alone knows being. So he says, being is knowledge, that is awareness. Being and consciousness are one and the same thing. Consciousness is the knowledge. Being is knowledge, he says, that is awareness. That awareness implies absence of ignorance. Can there ever be a time when you do not know that you are? Awareness is continuous, without beginning or end, and has no interruption. There may appear to be ignorance of other things, but there's never ignorance regarding your being. He says then, therefore everyone naturally admits non-existence of ignorance. How do you admit it? By the unbroken knowledge of your existence. And yet, why should he suffer? If existence is knowledge, and if the self is bliss, why should one suffer? If the knowledge is innate and continuous, why should one suffer? It is, he says, because he thinks he is this or that. Suffering is due to misidentification. If we say that suffering is due to ignorance, the ignorance consists of only such misidentification and is not a power or a substance unto itself. Why does he suffer? Because he thinks he is this or that. That is wrong. I am alone is, and not I am so and so, or I am such and such. You are not an object, such and such. You are not a person with attributes, being so and so. You just are. Undefined. He says, when existence is absolute, it is right. When it is particularized, it is wrong. That is the whole truth. What then is to be done if this is the whole truth? Free yourself of misidentification. Inquire and recognize what you consider yourself to be, and inquire and realize what in truth you are, what in truth you always are. If existence is particularized, conceived as an individual, it is wrong. It is simply a mistake. Your existence, your being, just as being is, absolute and not in relation to anything else imagined, is true. This he regards as right. The Maharshi continues with his instruction. See how each one admits that he is. Does he look into a mirror to know his being? His awareness makes him admit his existence or being. Everyone knows that he is. No one is devoid of this existence, and consequently no one is missing the knowledge. How does he know it? Does he look into a mirror to know his being? Looking into a mirror may be regarded as actual or figurative. Do you need to look at a mirror, physical mirror, to know that you exist? Contained within a mirror may be a reflection of your face, the face of the body. But you know your existence perfectly well without that. If we understand it figuratively, the mirror of me signifies the mind. Do you need a mind to know yourself? Don't you know yourself even in the absence of the mind? Whatever reflection might appear in the mirror of the mind, it is not you. His awareness makes him admit his existence or being. Consciousness knows, always knows, but he confuses it with the body, etc. Why should he do so? Is he aware of his body in his sleep? No, yet he himself does not cease to be in sleep. Why define the self in terms of the body? Such is purely misidentification. You exist with or without the appearance of a body. Your existence is undeniable now, and is also undeniable in deep dreamless sleep. You're not aware of a body in sleep. But do you cease to exist then? How does he know that he exists in sleep? Does he require a mirror to reveal his own being now? The way you knew your existence in sleep is the same way you know it now. You do not require a mirror, physical or figurative, to know yourself. How do you know that you exist? It is not particularized knowledge. It is absolute knowledge. It is knowledge knowing itself. Being knows itself. Only be aware, and your being is clear in your awareness. That is, consciousness and existence are identical. They are one and the same thing. Remain free of misidentification, just as consciousness, and your existence is realized.
Only be aware. So there's nothing to do in that. Only be aware.
That's right. It is beyond the scope of activity.
So, but it must be a combination of kind of that desire to know yourself and discriminate what you're not.
The instruction already assumes that one has the desire to know the self, has the desire for self-realization. And it also assumes that one is utilizing discrimination. Otherwise, the very sentences of the Maharshi's instruction will be incomprehensible. So, assuming one has a strong desire for self-realization and is using clear discrimination, he reveals that absence of misidentification alone is sufficient to bring about the desired realization. Only be aware. Don't be aware of this or that. Do not be this or that, but only be aware. That is, exist or identify yourself as consciousness alone.
Yeah, it wouldn't be objective search, obviously, which would be this or that in your statement.
It is not an objective search, not even subtly so. Hence his remarks about no need for a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, looking for it in the thoughts or some reflection of consciousness in thought, which is impossible.
So consciousness doesn't need a mirror or another instrument to know itself. It knows itself with a knowledge that is absolute. Hence the finality and the eternality of self-realization. The disciple then asked, how is one to know the self? Sri Bhagavan replies, knowing the self means being the self. Can you say that you do not know the self? Though you cannot see your own eyes, and though not provided with a mirror to look in, do you deny the existence of your eyes? Similarly, you are aware of the self, even though the self is not objectified. Or do you deny yourself because it is not objectified? When you say, I cannot know the self, it means absence in terms of relative knowledge, because you have been so accustomed to relative knowledge that you identify yourself with it. Such wrong identity has forged the difficulty of not knowing the obvious self, because it cannot be objectified. And you ask, how is one to know the self? Your difficulty is centered in how. Who is to know the self? Can the body know it? Let the body answer. Who says that the body is perceived now? Knowing the self means being the self. It involves clarity regarding your identity. One cannot know the self in an objective manner. So that one would say it is this, or it is that, or it is like this, or it is like that. In self-knowledge, the entire sense of your identity is swallowed up, or replaced, or resituated to the place that it actually has always been. Your identity is being, only being. That in which there is only being is called knowledge. That being, that knowing of the self actually is the self. The knowledge is not a connection between two things, a subject and an object. The knowledge consists of being. Being is the knowledge. Can you say that you do not know the self? Don't you always know your existence? Is not consciousness always existing? Though you cannot see your own eyes, and though you are not provided with a mirror to look in, do you deny the existence of your eyes? The analogy is simple and clear. One has and uses his eyes, even though he cannot see the eye. And he doesn't need a mirror to know that he has eyes. Similarly, you are aware of the self, even though the self is not objectified. Non-objective awareness is the knowledge that is sought. Or do you deny yourself because it is not objectified? Why expect to see the self as an object, gross or subtle? Objectifying one's own identity, subtly with thought, grossly with the body, is the stuff of ignorance. Freedom from such objectification is the knowledge of reality. It is the cessation of misidentification. He continues, when you say, I cannot know the self, it means absence in terms of relative knowledge, because you've been so accustomed to relative knowledge that you identify yourself with it. Such wrong identity has forged the difficulty of not knowing the obvious self, because it cannot be objectified. And you ask, how is one to know the self? Once you conceive of yourself as an object, rather than knowing the self as it is, there will be all kinds of questions as to how, the method to reach it, to attain it, etc. If you abandon the tendency to objectify the knowledge of yourself, the knowledge of yourself will remain as pure being, consciousness, bliss. It is without limit. It is utterly non-dependent. Make your vision non-objective. Your difficulty is centered in how, because of the misidentifications implicit in the question. Who is to know the self? In that inquiry lies the answer. Can the body know it? Let the body answer. Who says that the body is perceived now? Will the body, including the senses, ever know the self? They cannot, for the self is non-objective. Let the body answer, as if it had an awareness of its own, which is absurd. Who says that the body is perceived now? The body does not say that the body is perceived. Who says so? Who knows it? Find the nature of that bodiless one, and all doubts are resolved. Sri Bhagavan continues, in order to meet this kind of ignorance, the ignorance of objectifying the self and mistaking the body for oneself, in order to meet this kind of ignorance, the Shastras formulate the theory of God's Leela or Krita. Leela means play, Krita is the same or is doing. God is said to emanate as the mind, the senses and the body, and to play. Who are you to say that this play is a trouble to you? Who are you to question the doings of God? In this way, Sri Bhagavan points out the purpose of such instruction. It is not to establish that it is actually fact or reality, that God plays, God has doings, etc. Rather, it is to turn one inward, showing you that the mind, the senses, the body, etc., are not you and are not yours. Their play is all determined by God. What does that leave for you? Nothing but God. Who are you to question the doings of God? When the ego subsides, all is only of God. or next time. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.